The good news of Jesus Christ according to the Gospel of St. John in the 12th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. It's an interesting conflict in this text, isn't there? Jesus is right, of course. Almost by definition, it works that way. Not just right, but righteous. But Judas has a point as well, I would contend. And then there's Mary, who kind of kicked this all off with an extravagant show of gift. Sometimes I find it helpful to back up through a text, to start from the end and work back to the beginning to seek out meaning. It's interesting what comes out of it when one does such a thing. So if we start today with Jesus. Jesus is backing up Mary, isn't he? Leave her alone, he says, almost as if he's confronting a bully in Judas. Leave her alone. Then he says a couple of striking things, I think, sometimes that are misunderstood, misused even. He speaks about the poor always being with us. And it's easy to maybe take that as a bit of a dismissive thing, that these poor will always be with us. There's not much that we can do about that. And so maybe we can focus on some other things here and there. And sometimes this text is misappropriated to make excuses for not doing ministry for the poor. Look what Jesus said. Look what Jesus did here. I don't think anything could be further from the truth, though. If we look at all of the rest of Jesus' life, all of the ministry that he did constantly with the poor, for the poor, the financially poor, the spiritually poor, those who are poor in health, those who are poor in their station in society. If ever there was anyone for the poor and constantly with them, it was Jesus. I really do not believe that Jesus is backtracking on any of that here. I don't think he's saying this is an either-or proposition either. What he is saying is that he's only going to be with them for a little while longer. The setup we get at the beginning of this text tells us where we're at. We're in this last few days before the third Passover in the Gospel of John. And like we know in our position here in Lent, we're ever closer to the cross. That's where they're at. That's where Jesus is. And in no uncertain terms, he tells them what she is doing is for his burial. I don't think the disciples really get it. Mary does. But I don't think the rest do. Judas is on a whole different page and place. Maybe this doesn't make sense to them. They cannot see what Mary can see. They cannot see or hear what Jesus has been talking about for quite a while now on the trail of ministry. That his own burial is coming, and it's coming soon. That what Mary is doing is not just out of nowhere, but it's in the here and now. She is cluing them in. Jesus is making it obvious. And what about Jesus in all this? It can't be an easy thing for him to receive this extravagant gift because of its meaning. It's for his burial. It's for his death that is coming perhaps so soon that Mary can't even gauge it. So this gift that she has, she needs to employ it now. It's coming soon. For our ministry to each other and for our ministry as a congregation, I think what Jesus is pointing out is that there is a time definitely to care for one another. Here in the midst of us, we don't know how many days we have, what those numbers are. We don't know even just what the kind of pain is that people sitting in the pew next to us might be feeling. In the here and now, there's ministry to be done. Taking care of one another, looking out for one another, maybe even in ways that are of an extravagant gift. I would say a gift of time. Spending time, asking, how are you, and really meaning it. And being ready to hear about it too. So often we'll say, how are you? In other words, I'm out of here. But how are you? What's going on? One poignant question that I learned very recently in a radio interview that I was listening to on the commute was, where does it hurt? There's a question that really gets at things. I don't think it's one that we can just ask at any time or in passing, but when we really care. When we're prepared to take the time, when we're prepared to go there and empathy and sympathy and feel that with folks. I don't think Mary had to ask. I think she already knew. She heard what Jesus was saying and knew that this time was near. Where does it hurt? It hurts there in Jesus right now. And her response was this tremendous gift. It's not something to turn down or to turn away, but it's a call to be present with each other and take care of each other. This is what Jesus is saying. Leave her alone. His burial is coming. Judas, whole different place. I actually quite like the point that he raises. Look at this, what we have, 300 denarii. It's like a year's worth of salary in this perfume that's being spent here and now while there's the poor to minister to. All those people, hungry, sick, looking for help. What about them? Isn't this wasteful? He is correct. He's correct to raise up this question. There is so much ministry to be done out there, in here, wherever we might turn and look. There's people in need. I've come to learn that everybody is in some kind of need. We all have our stuff. Some of it shows, some of it's easy to see sometimes, but a lot of times it's not. It takes a little relationship building and trust building to get there. We don't know what we might find. Judas is correct. What about the poor? What about all those out there? That's a big reason why we are gathered here. Just yesterday, our young families came together and were stuffing eggs, getting ready for Easter, but as they were looking at the numbers of people that they had and the project that they were looking to do, they shifted gears pretty quickly. I have to commend them. They were stuffing eggs and said, let's wait a second with this. Let's get on to our work project. Put all of our people onto that. And they assembled lunch bags for other youth for this upcoming spring break week. A week where there's no school, a week where kids don't get to go to school and get to eat. These lunches will mean an awful lot to them, an expression of the love of God and God's people, tending to the poor that are right here in this neighborhood, right in our county of Fairfax as well, right across the street. I was so glad to be able to be a part of that and to turn these bags over to Facets, who's doing that work with the poor and the hungry in our own community, and they were grateful. To some extent, that is what Judas is talking about. There it is. And from young to old, we can make a difference like that. But the gospel writer is pretty quick to point out that while Judas is saying the right thing, his heart is not there. He wasn't saying it for the poor, even though those words were correct. He was wrong. He was wrong. Because it wasn't about them. It was about him. In no uncertain terms, the gospel writer tells us he was a thief. And this common purse where this sale and the proceeds would have gone into, he already was stealing from it, would again. There, Judas is wrong, and I think there is where Jesus is taking issue, and why. Not with the poor or helping them, but with the greed and the self-centeredness that was behind what Judas was up to. And even in that murkiness, I think there's a call to us to think about just why is it that we do what we do? Why do we minister to the poor? Why do we give of ourselves, our time, our treasures? Is it about us? Noblesse oblige? Rich guilt? Or is it more pure-hearted? Is it really about them? I've been saying for a couple of decades, any atheist can serve. So why do we, as Christians, do it? Jesus. In short, Jesus. We do it for him, as if he were them. They are him. We do it out of faith, not knowing really how much of a difference it'll make in the dent in world poverty, but if we can make a difference to one, it happens. It's done. And I think it's a difference to a whole lot more than just one. When I used to work with resident assistants, training them at Concordia College and leading them through the year, I would work them very hard and tell them straight right up front that they were going to work a lot harder than what they were going to be reimbursed for. But that's not why we did it. We were there to be our brothers and our sisters' keepers. We're there out of ministry. And try as we might, and all the effort that we put in all year long, we may never know what good that really does in the short run or even in the long run, but I said it makes a difference. It makes a difference to me, and I got to think that it makes a difference to God. God who sees, God who loves, God who cares. And every little bit that we put in somehow makes a difference. There we have to put our faith. There we are being disciples of Jesus. It's not where Judas was, but it's where Mary was. Finally, we get to her, the holy troublemaker, giving rise to this whole conflict, and she is as right as rain, as right as can be. She sees what's going on. Maybe Jesus struggles with it. We know that Judas certainly does. The other disciples don't even get it. But she is clear about what's happening here and what needs to happen. They're celebrating their friend, the Messiah, the one who raised their brother from the dead, the one whose own death is impending, and Mary knows exactly what to do. He's going to go through a lot in the upcoming days. He's going to be betrayed by one of his own disciples and best friends. He's going to be denied by another disciple and best friend, and all of the others will flee from him in just a few days. What this Jesus needs is love. As a sign of the grace of God for him too. So that when he undergoes all those things and worse, he's fortified. He's ready. He's prepared for his burial. And not just in a small way, but in an outlandishly gracious way. That expensive perfume, her own touch, her own hair. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. And Jesus knows it. She's as right as can be. And an example for us. As we interact with one another, as we interact with the world out there and overwhelming odds, still there is grace. Grace for us in the overflowing love of God. Grace for the world that flows through us, as small as we might be. And there, in any act of grace, there, we, they, and the world are right. Amen.